Hey.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is Monday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter.
He's Peter.
I am Peter. I think. That's what it says on my birth certificate.
Yeah.
I don't have to question that. How's it going, everybody? How's it going, Jen?
I had like a nice respite. You know, I went to Philadelphia for the weekend to visit my boy. And so I had both my boys. Yeah, I did. I just flew. I just got back. And so it was, for me, it's awesome because I had both my boys in Philly together. It was nice. And I just want to say that there was a good Free Palestine march. So shout out to whoever the group is in Philly that does that. And it looked like a very
Did you experience it?
No. I feel like, and especially with my kids, like they wouldn't, I mean, I was out with them, like walking around the city, and I just wasn't going to do that. But I was very pleased to see Philly's Free Palestine out.
No surprise there. I wouldn't expect anything less. And obviously, in light of what's happened today, I mean, look, we've been saying for a while that they're going to destroy themselves. And if what they feel that they have to do is murder Oscar-winning directors because they tell the truth about what's really going on in Gaza, that's what the state of Israel is. Maybe it was always inevitably going to become this, but like we say about our government in general, everything is just in full view of everybody now. There are no secrets. There is no hiding. What you see is what you get. Either you can accept it or you can't. And we're going to have some interesting conversations tonight. Especially
we're going to talk about the Bernie AOC grift, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I normally don't like to get into that, but I find myself particularly enraged with that right now.
Well, you mean the thing that Bernie gets most upset about is about primarying Chuck Schumer? Yeah.
No, that's not. I didn't even know that. I don't care. That's irrelevant to me. The fact that I feel like at this point now he's purposefully working against us. So now what went from me just thinking he was just towing the line is now he's actually, I feel, purposefully working against us. This is what's happening. They know they're in the shit. They know people are leaving their party. They know that the resistance is building on the outside. So they get together and they just start strategizing everywhere and doing all this ridiculous shit. I cannot tell you the amount of ridiculous emails I've gotten from Dem groups that I like, they are just desperate. And Bernie and AOC are now, they, to me, are now very much purposefully working against us. And it's upsetting. It's very upsetting because they are only doing this. All of those people that they're drawing in are people that actually could be part of what we're trying to accomplish. And instead, they're now just getting placated and shoved right back on the hamster wheel. That's what's happening. So again, I'm really beginning to think maybe he was always just the foil.
Well, what I'm having a hard time understanding is what is his motivation? You know, that to me is probably more than anything else the biggest problem I have with what Bernie's doing right now. There is no direction other than the presumption that this is about sheep herding people back into the Democratic Party.
Absolutely. There is no other reason.
Lowest approval rating in its party's history that's ever been
recorded. People. I want them to go away so badly. I want them to go away. Like, I wish we could all take something for that. You know, maybe there's like some sort of like anti-dem pill that we could all take it and like have a good night's sleep and wake up and they'll just be gone. Because at this point, they are the biggest impediment to the resistance. Absolutely. They are the biggest.
I don't like that word. I really wish you would stop using it. I wish everybody. I hate the word resistance.
You like revolution?
I think revolution's fine.
That gets us in trouble too.
Opposition. I like opposition better. That's a better word.
No, because that implies that we're working within the political system, and I'm done with it. So no, they in the political system are an impediment to the outside resistance and
So
revolution.
what you're suggesting is that we have to take back the word resistance, is what you're saying.
What I'm suggesting is that we have to take back everything. That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
I am so angry right now about, if I ever said Bernie was Mick resistance, which I have many times, I feel that 1,000-fold right now. And at this point, the only good thing about him is that he did light that spark and get a lot of people to be aware and jump on and realize that, oh, we should have healthcare and things like that. So he did do that. That's fine. But in terms of his particular role in then taking that to the next level and actually giving a solution to telling us what we're entitled to, failed. Big failed. And that is where it almost feels at this point purposeful. I'm irate. I'm irate. They're waiting 35 fucking thousand people that they're going to summon into a thing in their biggest rally ever to do what? I am incensed.
To do what?
Fuck them. Where were they when we needed them to rally those people all throughout the last 4 years? Or before
Bernie,
that?
Colin, if you want to, we'll discuss it at more length either with Zach or afterwards. But there was a clip of Bernie's recent interview where he commends Trump on the immigration issue. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is the Bernie Sanders that used to say these things back in 2015 and 2016. And the Bernie in 2015 and 2016 used to say things like Rahm Emanuel can go fuck himself. Today, this is all about how do we all get along? No. The reason why we have this problem is because you decided to play into that for so long. If you had stuck to your laurels and said that the reason Donald Trump is here, and if Bernie had any semblance of a spine, he would have welcomed their hatred as FDR did. They would have said, oh, you want to blame me for the reason why we have Donald Trump? You go right ahead. But I'll tell you right now, the American people want single-payer health care. They want a living wage. They want a clean environment. They want to not have endless war. Bernie Sanders out there talking about Vladimir Putin like he's going to take over Europe.
Are you
and that
fucking
the war in Ukraine is a good thing. Bernie Sanders refuses to say that what's going on in Gaza is a genocide. Like, Bernie has always been very iffy on foreign policy, and now he's shit on foreign policy.
I'm so annoyed. And the whole anti-oligarch tour, how dare they? They are part and parcel as to why we have this. And both of them voted for the money to Israel. So, it's like they are part of this oligarchy. They are facilitating it. They're going around, and the only people coming out for that crap were the people that didn't see it the first time. And so now they just think, oh, Trump's so bad. Now we can like Bernie. It's the same vagina hat wearing morons that were supporting Hillary when we were telling you to get on with Bernie. So now you're coming out for Bernie because he's still sheep herding you back into the party. You fucking tools. I'm so annoyed. I'm sorry.
It should come as no surprise to anybody that we have these problems, which again is in line with why we are where we are. And there are a lot of people who want to say, we told you so. No, what should be of tantamount importance right now for everybody is that if you really believe that, then when we tell you that the Democratic Party is not a solution to the problems we're facing right now, I don't know what more you need to see. The Democratic Party still has superdelegates, and they're not removing them. The Democratic Party still wants you to believe that groups like the Sierra Club are fighting on behalf of environmental causes. When in reality, they're just as bad as any other group. They might as well be transparent about it. But they're not.
Any organization affiliated with that party, seriously, it either already is garbage or is on its way to becoming garbage. Any NGO that affiliates with the Democratic Party turns into shit.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've said the same about any and all groups that have, at a time or another, especially the environmental groups like the Sunrise Movement and what's the other one that I'm slipping on right now? The one that was supposed to be really radical, but then told everybody to go out there and vote for Kamala. Climate Alliance. What happens when they lock arms with the Democratic Party? They're done. Finished.
Always.
Done. No one even knows what the hell the Sunrise Movement is anymore. Shouldn't even pretend to be an organization. And when you have people coming out saying, I don't believe in climate change anymore, it's like, you can throw up your arms in the air all you want. It doesn't mean shit because you have no power. You didn't listen. You never listened. And when we warned you, as we've warned friends of ours, including somebody who was very high up in the Sunrise Movement and kept their mouth shut when we told them not to lock arms with Joe Biden back in 2020, they didn't listen.
We did.
Didn't listen. Now you have nothing. Nothing at all.
Well, they don't care because they get all of these NGOs, all of these organizations, this nonprofit industrial complex is very real, right? So these things get to a certain size that really all they do is exist to make their payroll. That's it. And their people get money, not like, I don't necessarily think all of them are like, they're all taking tons and tons of money, but they get the point where they're so inefficient and all they're doing is serving, it works as a corporation. It really does. It's just, it's not like shareholders, but they become extremely inefficient. They become extremely feckless. They get all off whatever their mission was. And it just exists to exist. This I've noticed with so many organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's par for the course. And I'm not surprised. I feel bad for those that are scared. They don't know what direction they're going to go in or what they should be doing. Climate defiance. Thank you, Millennium. Yeah.
And I hope they stay pure. And
they didn't, but they didn't.
Oh, they fell too?
They did.
Aren't those the kids that were like interrupting everything?
Yes. And they
what happened to them?
They backed Kamala. They fell in line. That's what always happens. And they still don't understand that no matter what anyone's telling you, very often the reason why they end up doing it is because they believe that the only way their organizations can survive is if they get a substantial amount of money.
That's what I think too. That's their role. So basically after Trump was reelected, they had their little dem meeting. Our numbers are down. We got to figure this out. Okay, you make ridiculous TikToks. You go around and pretend we're anti-oligarchy. And they made this ridiculous strategy now, like as if they give a shit. They've had the past 4 years to give a shit, and they didn't. They didn't. Well, too little, too late. Bye-bye. And anybody at this point who shills for them, you're part of the problem. You're part of the problem. And it's just, we all, the rest of us have to wait for you to not be part of the problem for us to advance. That's what it feels like to me.
And we do have a lot of problems, and this is only going to get worse before it gets better, as we often say. But the reason for that is because a lot of people are afraid to make the necessary stand. Yeah, some people are going to hate you in the short term, but in the long run, you're going to have been proven right. And that's what not only have you done, but our next guest, who is a historian. It's the Paris Institute for Critical Thinking. He is also a member of the tribe, Jen. You're not alone.
I know. Well, I've made it like at this point, very much so over the past 16 months, a very big part of my mission to consolidate, coalesce, and cross-pollinate with as many anti-Zionist Jews as I can. One, everyone who was my Jew people are no longer my Jew people. So those people have abandoned me. So, it is something where it is few and far between these days where I can feel any sort of like pride and camaraderie in being Jewish. And so, yeah, I kind of need to meet all the peeps.
Well, here's a really good one. Zach Foster, welcome to Generational Change.
Hi.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Absolutely. I've seen you multiple times on with Katie. And it's just like I said, I really at this point find some solace in connecting with fellow people that understand where I'm coming from, that were either raised Zionist and understand the deprogramming, like all of it that so many of us went through. And so it's very trying right now. So I'm definitely seeking any sort of like connection in the universe with people that feel this ache, that especially for people like me who used to love Israel. So it's like, it's almost like I feel it twice as much. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel exactly the same way. I, like you, grew up in a very Jewish environment, which means in the United States, at least, over a very Zionist environment. And yeah, that Jews see other Jews as family members. And so when you see, as this big extended family, so when you see your extended family members spewing out genocidal rhetoric, dehumanizing Palestinians, supporting just the most awful human rights violations we've ever seen. it's incredibly distressing and disheartening, and it hits very close to home.
Right. So you were raised where Judaism and Zionism were intertwined.
Absolutely.
Okay. And it took you a while to deprogram, right? Like it doesn't happen overnight.
No, it's still happening in progress. I mean,
Yeah.
this is coming from someone who spent 15 years in a professional setting trying to understand the history of Palestine and the history of Israel. And I'm still unlearning things. Every once in a while, I'll say something. I'm like, is that just recollections from my childhood? And then I look it up. I'm like, I can't believe I just regurgitated some Zionist propaganda, but it's still happening. It takes literally 20 years to unlearn.
Yeah, it's about 20 years. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how much you took getting in, right? Like at what age you were, right? So it's sort of like however long in is however long out, maybe, but like, it runs very deep. And so I have been definitely going out of my way to invite on, and we've also had on Hasidic Jews that also are anti-Zionist, just trying to build coalition. But yeah, talk about like what you're doing in this right now, like how you're sitting with this and how you're like resisting this.
I was just having a conversation right now with a colleague and friend, Bassem Abu Nadi, and he said that he pointed out that the Palestinian history, because I'm teaching this course right now on Palestinian history, and he said, look, Palestinian history exists without having to talk about Zionism. In other words, without having to talk about Israel, we can have our own independent history that can exist without having to talk about Israel. It's our own history. It doesn't have to always be in connection to, in relation to, in response to. No, it's our own history, and he's right about that. But for me, having grown up with the propaganda and the myths, I sort of set on this trajectory of, no, I'm going to counter the myths. I'm going to counter the propaganda. I'm going to undermine the mythology. And look, my PhD dissertation is basically a study of the word Palestine. I wrote it in response to the mythology and the propaganda. There's no such thing as a Palestinian. They never called the place Palestine. I heard those things growing up over and over and over again. And ultimately, that's what led me to write a dissertation on that topic, was because I was so inundated with propaganda. I just wanted to know the truth, honestly. I didn't even care what the truth was. I just wanted to study the history, the empirical record, and just figure out the truth. So that's kind of where I came from and where I'm still coming from now. Yeah.
So it's impacted you to the point where you've basically made a career out of it.
I mean, I did my PhD on the history of Palestine. So that was what, 6-7 years. You could say now I spent much of my time writing about Palestine, thinking about Palestine, researching about Palestine. Absolutely. It's my bread and butter. It's my day-to-day these days.
So how infuriating when people from your life that were in your Zionist life, because I have this and I haven't done I've done some, like a lot of research compared to most people, but probably nowhere near what you've done. And they really think they know. And then you're wrong and they're right. It's so frustrating dealing with this.
Well, look, this is why I did the PhD. This is why I just read every book I can get my hands on Israel, Palestine, why I listen to every podcast and every interview on Israel and Palestine, because I want to be equipped with the facts, because there is so much propaganda and there are so many people telling you misinformation that comes across as sounding very authoritative, because they scream when they say it and they put it in all caps and they even have evidence to support their arguments in many cases. So there's a tremendous amount of misinformation that's couched as authoritative, that's couched as trustworthy, and so it's very insidious. And so yes, I absolutely I spend most of my time trying to debunk all this mythology.
Yeah.
Zach,
Peter, you can contribute. There you go.
I'm allowed to talk. The half Gentile is allowed to talk.
You're only a half breed, Pete. You're only a half breed.
So one of the things that I'm sure you've noticed has been the constant talk from a lot of the pro-Israel brigade about the blending of anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, which in reality, I think, is creating even more anti-Semitism, as exhibited by the language that I've been mentioning to Jen, that's becoming more and more commonplace, like little hats is now becoming a topic, a part of the vernacular again. I've told Jen that the biggest reason why anti-Semitism is growing in this country, and I believe this in my heart, is that there is too much of the Jewish population that keeps their mouth shut. They know it's wrong. They know that they should be speaking out against this. But unfortunately, because there is a substantial portion of the Jewish population that is in the upper to elite class of society, they worry about their social standing more than they should be.
And economics and their finances and their jobs and their tenure. You know, I mean, that's real.
But this is going to seep into their daily lives if it isn't already. And we're going to obviously get to what happened to Hamdan shortly. But I do think that it is important that more people like you are speaking up, because there are people within your community, your culture, that I would think want to say something, but they really are afraid of being labeled as heretics. I think if they feel that there are more people that do it, they will have that courage that is needed to do the same.
Just a quick anecdote. I remember, was it 2015, 2016, when the first the first AirPods came out, and you saw one person wearing them, and they just kind of almost looked like weird, and like you just have things popping out of your ear. And then within 6 months, 12 months, it was as soon as 5 people, 10 people started wearing them, it was totally normalized. Everyone was wearing them. There was no stigma anymore. The same is true, I think, with Israel Palestine. And by the way, I could name you multiple individuals, and I'm not going to name names, but you're exactly correct. People behind closed doors, these are Jewish colleagues, family members, friends, tell me things, and I'm like, wait, what? You believe that? But you never posted a single thing in the past 17. It never occurred to you to share that belief with the world?
My grandmother would have a heart attack. It's like that. That's.
I mean, I've had very close people to me say to me things like, these are Jewish individuals, say to me things like, well, yeah, I actually agree with you that Israel defining itself as a Jewish state is inherently discriminatory to non-Jews in Israel. I'm like, and I agree with you that when Israel kicked out 750,000 Palestinians from their homes 76 years ago, well, that was unethical and they should be allowed back. And I'm like, but like, well, hold on one sec. Like, what? How have you work in a Jewish institution, at a synagogue, like in a Jewish school, and because you pay such a high price in the Jewish community if you would say those things. You as a Jewish professional working in the Jewish community, you can eat a bacon cheeseburger on Yom Kippur, and you can be an outstanding member of the community. You could declare yourself an atheist and be an outstanding member of the Jewish community, take on leadership roles at the Jewish Federation, at the synagogue, at the JCC, whatever it is. But if you say Israel should be a state for all of its citizens rather than a state for the Jews, well, you'll be excommunicated. And so it's an institutional pressure, and it's a communal pressure. And it's very, very hard. And you're absolutely right. People just stay silent. Oh, we'll talk about how Trump is evil and how Elon Musk is evil and how so-and-so is evil. But we're just never going to talk about Israel because it's taboo. And I'll be excommunicated from the community if I do that.
Yeah. And I even see Henry in there, why should Jews be any different? Now, and I'm not sure what that's really in reference to, but one of the things that really bothers me is this constant, the fact that Israel does not stand for me. They are not a Jewish state. They are a white settler colonial state that uses Jews to somehow justify their existence. And so the more you keep connecting us with that, the worse it's going to get for us. Like that's also like legitimately happening. I am seeing it happen.
I do want to say that I do find this very funny. And I've been telling anybody who's willing to listen that, believe it or not, the Zionist state is actually cratering in a lot of ways right now because of the action
I hope so.
they're taking. And the one thing I saw on social media, which you've probably seen as well, you actually have people as waspy looking as me trying to convince people that I'm native to Palestine or Israel or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Excuse my language.
Oh, yeah.
If you're getting to that level of desperation, and it is a known fact, anyone who's even reasonably objective about this will say, you are not allowed to do DNA and blood testing in Israel. It's not allowed. And so, okay, if you really want to prove that you're native to the land, why don't you remove that law? It seems kind of stupid, don't you think? But they're not going to do that because, again, it's a facade. It's a lie. And why is it a lie, Zach? Why is it a lie, Jen? Because everything is about money and power. I will always believe that this is always about money and power. The biggest reason why I do believe, much like a 9/11 type situation, that Netanyahu orchestrated October 7th, 2023, there is, aside from his political aspirations or avoidance of legal problems, there is $500 billion worth of natural gas under Gaza soil. There is trillions of dollars worth of real estate redevelopment along the Mediterranean coastline in Gaza. Hence why Trump made that ridiculous video. Everything comes down to dollars and cents. We are the only developed country on earth that doesn't have a universal healthcare system. People sit in boardrooms every year debating, could we kill 100,000 people and make a profit, or do we have to kill 150? You tell me. And they're okay with it. They think it's perfectly normal. Just like, do we have to kill 500,000 Palestinians? Probably about 700,000, but, give or take a few here and there. And that's how they look at it. It's really just about, what is it going to take for us to make our end? That's it.
And what does that tell you?
Well, you couldn't be more right about U.S. politics and the role that money plays in U.S. politics. Let's see. We have on both sides of the aisle, by the way, on the Democratic side, on the Republican side of the aisle, we have Miriam Adelson, wife of the late Sheldon Adelson, the mega billionaire, a casino mogul, who donated between over the past 15, 16 years, the Adelson family has donated north of $600 million to the Republican Party. Maybe it's more like 800 million. I mean, just an astonishing amount of money. And then you have, of course, on the Democratic Party, what's the guy's name? It's escaping me for a minute.
Well, you've got a few. Believe it or not, the Democrats have more. You've got Reid Hoffman.
No, but who's the Israel guy?
Yes, I know who you're talking about. The guy in Los Angeles. I'm forgetting his name right now. Crap. Now I have to look him up. Colin, if you happen to know that name off the top of your head,
I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna pull it up in 3, 2, 1. His name is
it's a very Israeli.
Chaim Saban.
That's it. Yeah.
I apologize for that. He has also donated in the hundreds of millions. Now, both the Adelsons and the Sabans are one-issue families, and they've said this repeatedly. Chaim Saban said, "I'm a one-issue voter. My issue is Israel." In 2002, he said that. In 2010, he said that. The Adelsons are exactly the same way. Miriam Adelson in 2016, when she gave a couple $100 million to Trump, when he leading up to that election, their ask at the time was move the embassy.
Yeah,
the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, thus recognizing Israel's illegal annexation of 70 square kilometers of the West Bank into Israel, that was the number one ask, and they got it. Now the ask was actually, this is the irony, was the ask was actually for a ceasefire deal, because Miriam Adelson wants some of the hostages back alive, and what do you know? She got the ceasefire deal. Now it didn't last, obviously, because really, she wanted the hostages that she didn't care about saving people's lives in Gaza. But so you have, on both sides of the aisle, you have the mega donors are one-issue voters, and they're donating for Israel. Then, if you come down the food chain a little bit, you have AIPAC. AIPAC spent $100 million in the past election campaign season helping elect pro-apartheid and pro-genocide candidates to the U.S. Congress. They spent something like $15 million unseating Jamal Bowman, who was obviously a staunch advocate for a ceasefire. They spent something like $6 million to unseat Cori Bush, who was also a staunch supporter of a ceasefire. And they tried to unseat Rashida Tlaib by offering both Hal Harper and Nasser Beydoun, Michigan-based Democrats, $20 million to run against Rashida Tlaib. They, of course, refused the blood money, but they're trying their best to unseat everyone in support of Palestinian rights. So what happens is they'll just spend small amounts of money in other races, threatening to unseat those candidates. And so what do people do? They just shut up, because they're not, most U.S. politicians running for Congress don't really care that much about Israel Palestine. It's not their main issue. They have a bunch of other issues they care a lot more about. So they just go with the flow and tweet out what they're supposed to tweet out when they get the alerts. Oh, say I stand behind Israel. I support Israel's rights to self-defense. And then you get 400 members of the U.S. Congress tweeting out the exact same thing every time they get an alert from AIPAC to do that. And here we are, 18 months into a genocide, with the entirety of the U.S. Congress signing checks, $3 billion, $8 billion, $16 billion every few months off to Israel to give Israel 2,000-pound bonds to mass murder Palestinians.
I think it also shows in many ways that you're watching, whether it is the Bernie AOC, whatever tour you want to call it, it doesn't really matter. The reason why, when they talked about we are not going to have elections in the future, I was mentioning to Jen earlier, it's because people are losing complete confidence in the system. And I do believe that the devotion, the blind devotion, which is all blood money, I mean, let's be honest, that's really what it's about. When you think about any of the MAGA influencers in particular that are hardened pushing for Israel, you know what I've noticed? Substantial amount of the MAGA movement has had enough of Israel, had enough of hearing about it, had enough of people talking about it. They know that our economy is not doing well and is actually doing a lot worse than surface level would have you believe. And I think we're coming to a head with this. In many ways, Israel is going to sink this country, even though, Jen, you are of the mind that we run Israel.
Israel is us. Yeah, no, it's American empire. It's capitalist American empire. It is one empire. It is one arm. Israel exists at our pleasure. They might not think so, but they do. The people with the money and the weapons are the people who are in charge. They couldn't exist without us. So therefore, we're the thing. So people can look at it and we can make it seem like that as part of our political theater, that somehow we're kowtowing to Israel. No, we're not. We're not kowtowing to anybody. This is American empire. This is imploding capitalism. This is what we all, what we're all in for. And it isn't Israel. It's us. So, and Israel is the manifestation of us. That's our problem. It's the policy choice we're making, but it's empire's policy choice. That's what I think.
And I also believe that what happened earlier today, it's a level of encroachment that is growing bigger and bigger by the day, that it can't be ignored anymore. You either attempted to or will, because apparently he's captive right now. They're going to murder the Oscar-winning director of No Other Land.
You saw this, right?
Hamdan Bilal. A group of settlers, this is from Yuval Abraham, this is coming directly from Gaza. A group of settlers just lynched Hamdan Bilal, co-director of our film, No Other Land. They beat him, and he has injuries in his head and stomach, bleeding. Soldiers invaded the ambulance he called and took him. No sign of him since.
Can people even let that sink in? They abducted someone out of an ambulance who was being treated for wounds he suffered by the hands of Jewish.
Now, Zach, now hold on a minute. Our understanding is that Hamas was in the ambulance and they had children in front of them. So give them a break.
No, we're in the dystopian universe. Like, this is crazy. But basically what it is American empire can get away with things there that they can't necessarily get away with here, although they're working towards it. At this point, with like 100 cop cities out there, they're getting to where it's going to start happening more and more stateside. I mean, now we're shipping people off to all different places. Didn't we just ship a whole bunch of Venezuelans not to Venezuela? Didn't we just ship a whole bunch of Venezuelans to Colombia or something ridiculous like that? Like
to Nayib Bukele's torture dungeons in El Salvador.
I'm sorry. Yeah. El Salvador, excuse me. Like, we are out of control. It's out of control. Like, yeah. That's how I feel.
I think it was a very healthy debate you guys had just a moment ago on, does the tail wag the dog or does the dog wag the tail? And this is a very healthy, and by the way, they're not mutually exclusive, and at times they're mutually reinforcing. And at times the tail is in fact wagging the dog, and at other times the dog is in fact wagging the tail. But I don't see any reason why these 2 points are in contradiction. I mean, just look at what happened with Witkoff and Netanyahu a few months ago. No, Witkoff told Netanyahu, "You're going to sign the deal." That's that. But then Netanyahu was like, well, can we also carry out ethnic cleansing in the West Bank? And can we continue to annex the West Bank? And can we just restart the genocide whenever we want? And the answer to all those questions was yes.
But why? Right? But because ultimately it serves empire. It serves American empire in their mind. Now, not in the mind of a capitalist that's just pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered mentality. To us, it doesn't serve anything because it's going to implode. Like, we see that it's just like, it can only go so much further. But I don't know. To me, at the end of the day, the people that are in charge are the people with the money. Those are the people that are in charge, the kind of people that go to Davos, those are the people. And so where they are in the world is irrelevant. Like what language our oligarchs speak, irrelevant. This is a global thing. So that's how I see it. I see it as like the global white colonialist powers are just digging in all over the world because they feel the uprising. That's what it feels like to me. Or maybe I'm just hopeful.
There was an insistence when the election was taking place that Trump would make things worse. No, Trump would not make things worse. Trump would just make things more obvious. And that is not what people in power want. That has always been the biggest issue that the powers that be have had with Donald Trump. He does not protect empire the way that somebody like Kamala Harris, who literally was a total Manchurian, if there ever was one. Just tell me what you want me to say. I'll do it. No problem. Whereas Trump, he has those moments of clarity where he just says something that he shouldn't say because it makes it too obvious to everybody else, even if it's downright terrible. But it's so obvious that people can't turn away. The Adelsons, they're really great people. They gave me a whole bunch of money and they said, we want the Golan Heights. They said, I'll get them the Golan Heights. And everyone's thinking, is this guy crazy? No, he's just telling the truth. That's what he's doing. So when everyone says Trump's the biggest liar, I'm like, not really. I mean, sure, he lies, but Jen, you said he's the most honest liar that's
He's
ever
the most honest liar ever. And there is something remotely appealing about that. Like when we have people in Syria that are protecting the oil, he says, we're there for the oil. I'm like, thank you for your candor. You're not telling me you're there to protect democracy. You're not talking to me about saving the Syrian people. You're not blowing smoke up my ass. You're there for the oil. Thank you. And that allows more people to see it. See, that's the thing about Trump. He facilitates the revolution because everyone sees what is going on. So that's what I mean by an honest liar. He's completely a crook, but he's just so brazen about it. So I think people get much more aware.
Social change requires education and it requires action. And the problem when you have someone like Kamala Harris in power or a Joe Biden or an AOC is that they'll tell you, we're working tirelessly for a ceasefire. So everyone lets their guards down and no one does anything. And so there's no action. But then when you have someone come in and say, no, we're just going to ethnically cleanse Gaza. No, we're just going to restart the genocide. No, we're going to declare to the world, dear citizens of Gaza, release the hostages now or you're all going to die, which is what effectively what Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz just wrote. Was it 2 or 3 days ago? Maybe he talked to a liar and then you saw the statement come out after that to the effect of, dear Hamas, blah, blah, blah.
I saw the flyers. I saw the flyers online, so I know what they looked like. Yes, they were threatening to basically exterminate them.
But when you get when you get the directness, when you get the honesty, the immunity systems kick in and people take action. Not just that, because Trump is so overbearing and because the Trump administration is just doing everything in its power. I mean, we're talking about deporting legal residents. We're talking about sending off, people that have committed petty crimes off to a torture dungeon in El Salvador when he's so brazen and so insane in his policies. Again, the immunity systems kick in, people take action. There had been a more or less, I would say, relative amount of inaction on college campuses over the past year since last spring. But what has happened in the past 2 weeks, ever since they abducted and imprisoned Mahmoud Khalil? You've now seen a resurgence of protest movements on every college campus in the country. This is what we need. And you won't get that with a Biden or a Harris. You'll get that with a Trump.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
And this is the movie that was released that apparently caused Israel such a shit fit that they felt that they had to go after the guy who made the movie. And
except there's 2 of them. And let's talk about that part for a second. You know who the other guy is, right?
One is Israeli and one is Palestinian.
Okay.
Yuval Abraham and Bassel Adra.
Okay, so they just kidnapped this Palestinian man, right? And we know that they have infinitely more loathing towards their own people that they see as traitors than they would towards him. Like, you expect that from him. They treat Palestinians like crap all the time. They've been doing it for years. It's neither here nor there. But to them, but this guy who is their people that did that, I'm curious as to what, like, he could very easily get disappeared.
Well,
he
one
may
of
be
them,
dead.
yeah,
He may be
He
dead.
yeah.
He suffered head wounds, head injuries, is what you've all said.
Yeah.
internal bleeding. Yep. And this is the film that they made.
Thousand Palestinians face one of the single biggest expulsion decisions since the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories began.
هاي قصة عن القوة.
أنا اسمي باسم.
مسافر يطا هي المكان اللي كبرت فيه. بداية تصويري هي بداية نهايتنا. جرافات؟ أنا متسلم بخير.
شوف بس
شو الوضع؟
48 لا يهودي عندكم اياه
في صوت بيطلع يعني مش ناس قاعدين يعني مش بني ادمين.
شو دخلوا؟
This is what's happening in my village now. Soldiers are everywhere.
يكون كثير حلو إذا بصير استقرار. بعدين انتوا بتيجوا تزوروني، ليش أنا بزوركم؟ ولا لا؟ ولا شو تفكر؟ لو أنت مكاني شو تفكر؟
Was not allowed to be screened in the United States.
Shocking.
Couldn't
Yeah.
find a distributor.
Nope. And it's not that people probably didn't want to distribute it. They were probably told, you're not distributing this movie.
Well, you saw the theater in Miami that was going to show the film, and then I think I can't recall exactly what happened, but the owner of the theater or whoever was, you perhaps remember the details better than me, but he was threatened with something.
We've had Billy
It was
Corben.
Miami Beach. It was on
Yeah.
Miami Beach, and I
Miami
remember
Beach,
it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, the Miami Beach. Yeah, we've had Billy Corben on the podcast multiple times, and he has always been so loud about saying, look, I don't know how corrupt you think your city is, but nothing's stopping Miami. Like, there is a level of corruption that goes on down here. And yeah, part of it's the whole, Zionist Jewish mafia. But at the same time, it's stuff like this. It's this brazen attitude about, yeah, I don't care what the law says. You're not allowed to bring truth into our protected culture. We pointed this out on the podcast a long time ago when you had Medea and the gang going up to all the AIPAC members and who were the lobbyists there on behalf of AIPAC. And several of them had their tags that you could see, and several of them were from Aventura. So it shouldn't surprise anybody that that's one of the main areas of this country that had it. And it's
Where
also,
are you, Zach? I'm sorry. Before we go, you were talking Aventura, and you're nodding like where. Are you? You're not from down here, are you?
I'm originally from Michigan.
Okay, all right.
Oh,
Michigan tribe.
Are you in Bloomfield?
Bloomfield.
I grew up in Southfield and West Bloomfield. Yeah.
Okay.
But
tribe. I know where all the tribes are, all around the country. I know where everybody is.
Yeah, but that also speaks to an even bigger thing, which is this is in many ways class trade, because Bloomfield, much like North Miami Beach, are very nice, if not upper middle class communities.
Well, now North Miami Beach is not, but yes.
But as a result, that's where the hatred comes at you even harder, because from what I've seen, it is almost universally a class issue, because working class Jews are not on board with this stuff. They really are not. The people that speak the loudest in favor of the Zionist state are people that live extremely comfortable lives. Noah Tishby would be a great example of that. Deborah Messing would be a great example of that. They embody all of those things. And maybe the worst one of all, which unfortunately we've had to change our protocol on our channel, Jerry Seinfeld is probably as good an example of that as we have.
I would also add that it's not just, I mean, maybe it is wealth as well. It's actually an interesting angle that I hadn't thought so much about, but it's also age. And the real divide in the American Jewish community is between the young and the old, as far as I can tell, right? Young Jews, I mean, even going back before October 7th, you have polling data in 2022 suggesting something like 40% of Jewish millennials and younger describe Israel as an apartheid state, right?
Well,
and today, young Jews, 50%. I think actually, no, that's total. The percentage of Jews, young and old, who describe Israel's actions in Gaza as a genocide, we're talking 40, potentially as many as 50% of American Jews describe Israel's actions in Gaza as a genocide.
Yeah, but don't tell that to people like Isle, whatever. How do you say his name, Jen?
Isle,
yeah. The guy, the kid, the guy who's, so you say that this is an age thing, but yes, but don't forget, there's also a substantial amount of money that gets paid to these online influencers 100%. To push this message. So when you see anybody like Insurrection Barbie or anybody that's in the MAGA movement that is constantly pushing the Israel angle, and this includes Tim Pool, includes anybody, they have to be getting paid. There is no other reason. There has to be an exchange. What are the justifications?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just going to jump in and say, look, when I was a college student, now I'm dating myself a little bit here, but I think things are pretty similar these days. But basically, when I was a college student, I went on 5 free trips to Israel. I went on a free trip to Israel with Hasbara Fellowships. I went on 2 or 3 free trips to Israel with the religious group on campus called Jammed. This is at the University of Michigan. This organization that sends Jews to yeshivot. Super, I mean, this is religious, but it's religious Zionist. It's super Zionist. Then you obviously have Birthright. There's not 1 or 2 or 3, but there's a half dozen of these Jewish organizations that offer free trips to Israel.
You didn't even include mine. That doesn't even include mine.
I don't even know them all. There's so many. It just flush with cash. And by the way, there's an AIPAC free trip to Israel, and they're sending black leaders. AIPAC is organizing trips for black students on campus. The leaders of the black community on campus, they're sending to Israel for free. They're sending for free to Israel leaders of different groups of students on campus. To this day, I mean, in 2020, in November 2023, members, of my own community were given, was it a couple $100 to get on a bus and go to Washington D.C. to cheer for genocide?
Right. They have to pay. They have to pay to get supporters, essentially, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to have enough people at a protest.
Perhaps the biggest shitbag of them all, and I use that term, probably the most endearing one I could think of for Mr. Shapiro. Ben has built himself quite a financial empire by being the voice of not just the Daily Wire, but being the voice of the Zionist movement. And what I found very interesting is, maybe you did as well, and Jen, I'm sure you would think anything that comes out of Mr. Shapiro's mouth is a crock of bullshit.
I hope I don't have to hear it. Are you going to play it?
But this is a big one, because we are very big supporters of JFK, what his message was, what he died for, and who ultimately had him killed. And we have our thoughts. And of course, when Mr. Shapiro makes a public statement about the JFK files like this, it really gets you thinking, doesn't it?
Conspiracy theorizing that's become incredibly popular on the right these days. It was popular on the left, and now it's become increasingly popular on the right. The kind of, let's just ask questions. We'll ask, who really killed JFK? Wink, wink, nod, nod.
I have a few thoughts. If he's going to be talking about it, how about you guys? I got a few ideas.
I can't with him. Like, I just
And then
can't
you're
even.
like,
take
well,
it
do you have any
seriously.
evidence of the thing that you are presupposing? Well, no, I'm not making any accusations. I just know I don't believe the story that I'm being told. I know not to trust the authorities. Like, well, that's fine, but do you have like any evidence? Like evidence, not just supposition. I said, well, you're part of it, aren't you? You're part of it. The reason that you're so defensive about all this is, I don't care who killed JFK. I mean, I do, because it's really interesting, but I noticed that the calendar says 2025 and he was killed in 1963. And so my opinion about who killed JFK has about as much relevance as who killed William McKinley, or James Garfield, which is to say not an enormous amount.
I mean, talk about giving away the game.
I can't with him. He's just.
Does he give JFK a bad name?
He is a horrible. He's, to me, like just a cleaner cut version of Shmuley. These are people that are an abomination of Judaism to me. And I'm, look, I'm an atheist. I've never, said otherwise, but I was raised by Jewish learned people. And this guy is an abomination of that. These people want to be willfully ignorant. They want Jews to stay ignorant. So, that to me is anti-Jewish. Because the one thing that was always sort of indoctrinated in me, like consistently, was that Judaism was always about learning and studying and becoming and being the light. Like that was the whole thing. So this guy is not that. So yes, he is a shitty version of a Jew. Zach, thoughts?
Yeah, well, Ben Shapiro, where to even start with this guy? I mean, he put out some 30, 40-minute, Israel Palestine explainer video. It's just replete with misinformation. The guy doesn't have the basic facts right. He's not very well versed in the history. He regurgitates lies and propaganda and mythology. And look, ultimately, he is of the opinion that basically Zionism is Judaism and Judaism is Zionism. That if you oppose Zionism, you're somehow anti-Semitic. And as we all know, throughout the history of the past 140 years of the Zionist movement, you were much more likely to be a Zionist if you were anti-Semitic. In other words, anti-Semites were attracted to Zionism. This was the case with the most prominent anti-Semites in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The leader of the anti-Semitic movement in Hungary, Istotzi, was a raging Zionist. The German journalist Wilhelm Marr, who coined the term anti-Semitism, was a raging Zionist. Arthur Balfour, the most famous Zionist in history, who penned the Balfour Declaration calling for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, he was a raging anti-Semite and sponsored legislation to keep Jews out of Britain when he was prime minister in 1905. And to this day, the most anti-Semitic people in the United States, people like John Hagee, who founded Christians United for Israel, a 10 million member strong organization, the biggest organization, Zionist organization today in the United States, is the Christian Zionist organization, the Christians United for Israel.
Yep.
And John Hagee is his founder. And in 2003, John Hagee published a book saying that God sent the half-breed Jew, Adolf Hitler, to planet Earth to push the Jews of Europe to Israel, where they would then bring about the second coming of Christ and thus usher in the new kingdom. We're talking about the most prominent anti-Semite in the most prominent Zionist in the United States today is a raging anti-Semite. The same is true of Buchanan. The same is true of all these megachurch pastors who preach Christian Zionism. It's very embedded and deep in the religion, right? That chapter 12, Genesis chapter 12, Genesis chapter 15, Deuteronomy chapter 28. There it says it right there. God promised Israel to the Jews. We got to support Israel. And they're just raging. They believe all this anti-Semitic stereotypes of Jews. They're the financiers of the world. They control the world. They're the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes, right? I mean, it's these, and they also believe in ethnic purity, which is also why they love Zionism, because Zionism also believes in some kind of racial ethnic purity. And so it's the racists and the neo-Nazis and the anti-Semites are attracted to Zionism. And if you go around Europe today, all the right-wing parties in Europe, the AfD in Germany, the National Party in Britain, go to France, same problem with Le Pen. The people who are the most anti-Semitic, who have the anti-Semitic roots, whose parents and grandparents either supported the Nazis or belonged to the Nazi party themselves, these are the people supporting Israel today.
Yeah.
These are the types
For sure.
of people. And it's even worse because I live in the panhandle of Florida, and even though this is not what I would consider to be I mean, it's a religious area, sure, but it's not a backwards area. But you've got a lot of pockets, especially in the deep South, South Carolina, most Georgia, Central Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, East Texas. When people are kept down and education is at a premium for only people who have real money, it's easy to control people whose lives have basically revolved around the church from the time that they were young. And if you are a Pentecostal preacher, if you're any denomination within the Protestant faith, and especially if you're evangelical, this is what you're taught, much like there are segments of the Jewish population that are taught from a very young age that everything's about Israel. It's of vital importance. It's where the final battle of good versus evil is going to take place, and it'll happen in your lifetime. I can remember, it's amazing how quickly things change. Because I remember when Sarah Palin was running as the VP with John McCain and was talking about, oh, I think it's going to happen in my lifetime. And people thought she was a kook. But we've really accelerated to a point.
She is a kook. Two things can be true. Okay.
I'm not debating that point.
I'm just saying those are not mutually exclusive points.
But she did write a book, Going Rogue, and it was a bestseller because, you know, any book could be a bestseller these days. I do think it is kind of amazing in many ways that we are informed about what's going on, but indoctrination is very real, and it really seeps into a person's identity, to who they are, what they believe. If there's one thing that I can't stand seeing, probably more than anything else, is when they do the splicing of the Israeli flag with the American flag. I think that's a desecration of the American flag. And I believe in the red, white, and blue. I do. I don't believe in the people who run our country. That I know. But when I see that, I'm reminded of the jingoism, the nationalism, but especially the theocracy that many people desire. And the reason they desire it is because they want to prey on people that don't have a lot going for them. It's a lot easier when you are preaching Christian nationalism, Christian Zionism, because that's all they really have. And that's why the John Hagees of the world are as powerful as they are. Do I think he believes half of what he says? No. But it gets
he's a capitalist. He's a capitalist. I lived in San Antonio for 6 years. I am very familiar with Hagee. I have seen him out. He dresses like a pimp. He fleeces his people. He doesn't believe in shit but money. That's what he believes.
I saw a black Pentecostal preacher who was decked out with all the bling, says, "You got to give me money because this is how you get to heaven." I'm thinking, yeah, we can look at this from a distance and think this is insanity, but to the people that he's preaching it to, they just believe it. And I wish it wasn't like that. I wish we were not that country. I don't know where that schism happened. I don't believe for a second that that's what Thomas Jefferson or James Madison were talking about when they were writing the Declaration and the Constitution, respectively.
I just saw it. I just saw the Declaration in person this weekend. I've seen it at the archives, but I saw in Philadelphia. Anyway, I digress.
No, you're right. I think that those founding documents still have a lot of value, but the power structure in our country has manipulated people to the point in which you can look genocide right in the face and figure a way to justify it. And that's a scary place to be. But I also believe that there is an uprising that's happening against Israel right now, and it's going to come to a head because of things like what happened earlier today, because it's not going to stop. They have no reason to stop. They don't believe the ride is ever going to end. I believe it is going to end. How quickly? That's going to be up to us. Your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. I think we're seeing, we're witnessing. What's that famous phrase? Decades happen. Decades can go by when nothing happens, and then weeks can go by and decades can happen. It's more than a few weeks. It's probably going to be a few years, maybe even 5 or 10 years. But we are witnessing in real time the state of Israel just completely melt down and collapse.
Yeah.
On so many levels, right? You could start off with the level of Israel's place in the world. on October 6, 2023, those of us who paid close attention understood that Israel was a pariah state. But for the vast majority of people, Israel was a state among the states, participating in the Olympics. An Israeli passport is valid in most countries in the world. It's actually a decent passport in many places. It gets you to Europe and the United States, more or less visa-free. Israel, so at the level of international acceptance, what have we seen? We've seen the ICJ pursue Israel's now on trial for genocide at the world's highest court. Israeli leaders, Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu and former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant have ICC, International Criminal Court, arrest warrants out on them. They can't travel to most countries in the world anymore. And this is just the beginning, right? And then you have Israeli soldiers, they can't travel anywhere anymore because they all posted their own war crimes on TikTok. You're seeing the impunity crumble in real time. You have countries now declaring Israeli travel documents invalid. I believe it was Guanajuato, I think. And this is just the beginning, because people forget legal processes do not take weeks or months or even years. Sometimes they take many, many years. So we're witnessing the very beginning stages of a decades-long process in which Israel's place in the world will completely unravel. That's at the international level. But then at the domestic level within Israel, the society is collapsing. If you open up the front page headline of Yediot Achronot, the most widely read daily in Israel, open up that paper this past week, the headline would read "Constitutional Crisis," because Bibi Netanyahu now, in order to preserve his power, his coalition cannot collapse, because then he's going to wind up in prison, because he's right now on charge. He's facing charges of corruption, bribery, and breach of public trust. And there's a fourth one as well now. But so he can't leave power. So what is he doing? He just fired the head of the Shin Bet, Israel's internal security services, the person in charge of prosecuting him. So the country's in a state of turmoil internally, leaving aside that, so internally, it's also suffering. The economy is also suffering. There's no tourism. Moody's credit rating has dropped 2 to 3 notches in the past 18 months. The Supreme Court is under major threat by the government, which is basically trying to cancel its power. So checks and balances are gone. The state is turning authoritative. A $23 billion Intel plant was canceled. They've lost foreign direct investment. The high-tech sector is suffering massively. And now Israel's, you hear these stories every day. You see them on TikTok, you see them on Instagram. Israelis are pariah individuals, because everyone knows that 95% of Jewish Israelis have been supporting the genocide. And so everyone knows if you meet an Israeli Jew, there's a 95% chance they are pro-genocide. So people know that. And
yes,
the Israelis themselves are just pariahs. Everything about the state, the society, the culture is turning pariah. And
I wish it happened here. I need it to happen here.
They live in their own bubbles, so they don't even know. They're kind of unaware of it even.
They're losing population. They're losing population. And I know that because they're all coming here. And so we are being infested by genocidal people here in South Florida. And I'm serious. Like I talk about my Pilates studio. It is like full of this. And it's gotten worse and worse. It's a problem. That's our real immigration problem.
I can only hope that from your work, Jen's work, from other people that are Jewish, that have a platform, like Katie Halper, there's plenty of good people that are out there.
I'm coming back here.
You've got Lee Camp. They're using their voices in a way that can make a real difference. Jacob Berger, love that guy.
He's great.
And he really went viral as a result of that psychotic Zionist that came up to him and a bunch of other Jews and Palestinians, along with the Hasidics from Brooklyn, that were protesting in Manhattan. And you had that Zionist, white, blonde, blue-eyed, probably from the North Shore. Hate to be so descriptive, but, just kind of checks all the boxes. Acting like a lunatic, saying you're not a Jew, and then hitting people without feeling like they would get in trouble for, hitting people. And all the while I'm thinking, when you really measure how people really feel about this, they're probably outnumbered in a significant way. But money and power in politics is a big deal. And is it going to continue to last? I don't know. But what I do know is as the night is always darkest before the dawn, I do feel we're turning a corner. And the reason I feel we're turning a corner, as I mentioned earlier, is you have a substantial amount of the America First and libertarian MAGA movement that wants no part of Israel. They totally see it for what it is. They know it's a genocide. They know that we are sinking billions upon billions of dollars into their operation, and good for them, because they've been very consistent about Ukraine and Israel. I wish more people on the left were consistent about it, but some people
they don't have
forest through the trees, and that's half the battle, understanding foreign policy as much as domestic policy. But that's why I've always felt that our foreign policy is maybe even more important than our domestic policy, because it's reflective of the type of nation that we are. What do we prioritize? We prioritize empire around the world over the sanctity and safety of our own people. That should never be up for debate ever again from anybody. And the only people who say that America at this point is a great nation are the percentage, whether it's 10%, 15% of the population that truly benefits from this country. Okay, you benefit from it, but what about the other 80 to 85% of people that are
They don't
suffering?
care about them. They don't care.
No, survival of the fittest. And so as we wind down the conversations,
Can we have answer questions that I keep trying to get answers to on the screen?
I apologize. What was the question?
Okay. Jimmy Zimzam wants to know if Professor Foster is getting any pushback from Rutgers, which I thought you would appreciate of all people, Peter.
Are you a professor at Rutgers?
No, I'm a legal fellow at the Rutgers Center for Race, Security, and Rights.
What campus is that?
It's the center is based in New Jersey, right? Is it New Brunswick?
New Brunswick?
I don't actually. I'm not based there, but I'm just a fellow. I what does that mean? I give teach-ins. Over the past year and a half, I've given a half dozen or so teach-ins on the history of Israel, Palestine, the history of Gaza, the history of the West Bank, the history of settlements, etc. And to answer the question, well, first of all, cancel me, delete my fellowship at Rutgers. I really don't give a fuck. Really,
Right.
I really don't give a fuck.
But have you gotten any crap from them?
I'm not sure how public I'm allowed to be about this stuff.
Okay.
Look,
So it's been an issue. There's an issue.
So here's what.
Let
Don't say anything. No, I don't want him getting in trouble. So you can be quiet and I'll talk now. So here's what I want to tell you, which is important, which you may have already known, but maybe you didn't know. So Ayel Jacobi, who I'm sure you've seen, probably well aware of his account, huge pro-Israel supporter. Did you know that his father is a tenured professor at Rutgers University, who is from Israel and is a rabid Zionist of the highest order? And so when you think about the predicament that you put yourself in at my alma mater, because I am a Scarlet Knight, graduate of OC. I have been very loud about the fact that this kid's father.
You went to Rutgers.
Whatever, Jen, whatever, Northwestern, that this kid, his father is politically connected. He lives in Princeton, the whole 9 yards. So when people wonder, how do these guys get 100,000 plus accounts on X, Instagram, places like that? Because these are farmed accounts. These are paid accounts. They are given a leg up for political, economic, cultural reasons, and he's no exception. And so when one wonders, why is this guy able to message the way that he does? Why does he do what he does? And never, ever gets questioned. It's because he's connected and he's protected. And his father, who is also at Rutgers, they just right now, as it stands today, they're able to get away with it. And North Jersey, there's a number of neighborhoods. I don't know how well you know North Jersey, but you have neighborhoods like Livingston. You have neighborhoods, like Parsippany. There are these very wealthy enclaves in North Jersey that are predominantly Jewish. They're very affluent, and they are very politically connected. This is the state of Josh Gottheimer. In fact, Gottheimer's congressional district is about 1 or 2 towns over from Rutgers University. And so when you think about the political aspirations of such a Zionist who wants to be the governor and ultimately wants to run for president, follow the trajectory of these people and what they do and why they do it. If we're going to get to that next level of awakening for a lot of people out there, I think it's on us to kind of get the cancer before it spreads too far. The things that you do and the message that you spread.
Can we answer some more questions though? Or are you rapping?
I was trying to, but you consistently
because you're not. I'm paying attention to people in our chat, and they have questions.
We got questions from the chat.
These are our people, and you're just. I don't know who you're talking about at this point. I just want to answer some people's questions.
Could you be not as rude, please? More
I've been waiting for so long. I just want to answer their questions.
I just want to say one brief comment about that question, which is like, look, anybody who develops a voice and an audience and speaks in support of human rights in Palestine is going to get attacked, and there's going to be armies and trolls of people that go after them and try to get them canceled, especially in academia, especially professors, postdocs, grad students. Right. It's not a coincidence that the first deportee was Mahmoud Khalil. No, because they go, and it's not a coincidence at Columbia. He's like the number one. I mean, he's just like number one on the list of targets. They go after anyone associated with that because these institutions have prestige in society. Harvard, Columbia, Yale, Princeton, right? So they're going to go after those people first. So, I have a fellowship at Rutgers. Great. Come after me. Like, bring it on. The more you come after me, the louder I'm going to yell.
Exactly. All right. This question. And I have a feeling I know what you're going to say because I know what I would say to answer this, but should Israel exist?
Well, look, okay, so states do not have the right, no state in the world has a right to exist under international law. If tomorrow Mexico decided to form a union with the United States, or if Chile decided to form a political union and merge with Argentina, international law has no opinion about that. If tomorrow Saudi Arabia says we're going to dissolve the kingdom and we're going to transfer authority of the kingdom over to Kuwait, international law has no opinion about that. States do not have rights to exist. Peoples have rights to exist. The Palestinians have a right to exist. You could even say the Israelis as a national group have a right to exist. Peoples have rights to exist. Ethnicities, races, nationalities have rights to exist. But states do not. Individuals also have rights under international law. But again, so the question of should Israel exist? Well, I'm very international law is not perfect. We've inherited it from the colonial Westphalian state system that we've inherited it from, and it has a lot of problems. But it's the best system that we've got. So what does international law say about the question should Israel exist? Nothing. I have no opinion. Should Israel have the right to be an ethno state where some ethnicities have more rights than other ethnicities? No, of course not. Should Israel have the right to impose a brutal, belligerent military occupation on millions and millions of Palestinians? No, of course not. Should Israel have the right to declare that 900 municipalities within its borders have a right to exclude Palestinians from those municipalities? No, of course not. Should Israel have a right to drop 2,000-pound bombs every day on 2 million defenseless civilians in Gaza? No, of course not. That's how I would answer that question.
Yeah. And it's funny. I've said that many times too. Countries don't have rights. People have rights. Countries have obligations to protect the rights of their people. So it's funny that we even talk about countries having rights. And then I'll say by which authority? Because we don't even abide by international law, even if that were the authority. So I don't understand why we would even have that. But I don't think Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish state. No, I don't support the idea of an ethno state because the only way to have one is with an ethno cleanse. And so that's just no. That's what I mean, that's how I answer it. But yes, ultimately the people deserve to exist. Yeah.
I just think you're a couple of self-hating Jews, but that's just my opinion.
I'm not self-hating, but I am starting to have a problem with some people.
Yeah, can you take a joke? That was
no,
a joke.
Not anymore.
Clearly not. Zach, what are you working on? How can people find you? It's really been a pleasure having you on the podcast tonight.
My pleasure. Always happy to come back. And I know we had a few mishaps and it took a while to schedule this, but I'm always happy to join you guys. Love what you're doing. I have a website called Palestine Nexus. You can subscribe to my newsletter on that website. I publish a piece most weeks, not every week. I also teach courses on the history of Israel, Palestine, and history of Zionism. And I actually have a course out right now on the history of the Palestinian people. You can find all of that at PalestineNexus.com.
Excellent. That's really cool. I appreciate that. Thank you for putting stuff out there, like just continuously putting out history. Like we definitely are getting people putting out, well, this is what's happening now. But most people have no context. There's no frame of reference, and that is consistently what I find to be the problem. So I so appreciate what you're doing. Thank you so much. And it was so nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Information is in the description below, guys. So please make sure that you are subscribed to Zach's work. Also follow him on social media. We will definitely have you back. I think the best way to have you come back is to do kind of like an anti-Zionist Jewish panel or something like that. I think that, just
we have a series. We have a series, right?
Yes. Well, it's a little early in the year, but I'm sure that Zach would love to come for Festivus at the end of the year or whatever.
We were doing Festivus annually and people would come on and air their grievances. But now that I loathe Jerry Seinfeld, I'm so this was the first year we didn't have Festivus because I don't want to give any sort of credence to Seinfeld because I'm so annoyed. But I literally have a Festivus.
It's Kramer. Wait, but it's Kramer. Or no, what's the fat guy's name?
No, it's George.
Newt. Hello.
Newt. Sorry, Newt. But it's Newt who's celebrating, and not George,
Right.
No, it's Frank Costanza.
Frank Costanza.
It's Costanza. It's Frank Costanza, right?
That's right.
Right, but it's from that show, and I feel I don't know. I'm like I can't stand him now, so it doesn't feel good anymore.
Why don't you support the state of Israel? It's a perfect place. I just don't understand. I don't care about Palestine. Let me tell you, it was so on brand for him to not only say that, but to say it the way he said it, like the pompous ass that he is.
He's a piece of shit, and I can't.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Zach. It was nice to meet you.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, brother.
Bye.
Great guy. And great conversation.
Yeah. I love meeting normal tribes people because it restores my faith that there are any, because where I am, as you know, down here, there really aren't. They're just not. The tribes people down here are just, they're just gone. Brett Boyle, I want to say something about your picture, your thing. I had this thought that would be a really cool video to take the Nazi flag and have it morph into the Israeli flag, I don't know the phrase that you use for that kind of imaging, but yeah. And your thing makes me think, yes, I think that somebody should create a video or a little blip where the Nazi flag morphs into that. I think it would be kind of very telling. Anyway.
When you think about what we were talking about earlier regarding Bernie and AOC and how they are trying to sheep herd people back into the Democratic Party, do not underestimate what it means to have affluent Jewish Zionists in positions of power in both parties, meaning that you can't escape the reality. For those of you who know who Mr. Rattner is, he was a prominent figure in the Obama administration. And he wants to conflate social leftism with economic leftism. Not a mistake, but here's what he said.
I've been able to convince people that Trump is bad for them. I think everything Sanders and AOC are saying is fine, but then you get to the policies. Do we really want to go back to Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, defund the police?
The idea.
Yes, and yes.
Yeah, the idea that you want to conflate. Now, he's not done. But you're saying, do we really want to go back to universal health care, Green New Deal? And
back to it.
And, it's this whole, remember, words have meaning. And when you say we want to defund the police, no, what you really should be saying is we want to end the police state, because that's what we have. We have a police state. We do not have.
Well, I'm an abolitionist at this point, but what? I am so done with all this crap. But the fact that he's saying, are we going to go back to those things? When did we have those things?
To even make it as part of it. And could you look more like a stereotype, the type of person that would spew this? And he's not done. He's got more to say.
Women playing men's sports, potentially. Do we really want? That's where I think ultimately we lost, because.
Yes, that's the problem. That's the problem. Is that women? There's a women's NBA now. That's it right there. There's women playing men's sport. Are you this?
Well, how do you conflate the two? Is the question.
I'm
Like,
with Joe. I'm with Joe.
Yeah, Morning Joe is still a thing, and these are the types of affluent, probably Zionist type of people that they bring onto their show to talk about why we can't have progressive populist policy in the United States.
It's all because women want to play men's sports. That's the whole problem, people. That's it right there. If we just stop that.
By conflating the two things together, you're trying to render the argument that single-payer healthcare is a winning issue by suggesting that men playing women's sports isn't a winning issue, which it isn't, but they're not the same thing. So it is deliberate.
I'm incensed that this is even a topic of discussion when the world is falling apart. Yes,
but that's what somebody like Rattner is going to say. That's what somebody that is as rich and powerful as him is going to say, because he doesn't want single-payer health care. He probably is heavily invested in stocks that are invested in the pro-health system.
So are the people that watch Morning Joe. So continue.
Those people who make less than $50,000 a year couldn't relate to the far left policies. The rhetoric is great about Donald Trump, but then you get to the policies, and Alyssa Slotkin is speaking, I think, more the reality of what we have to do as a party.
Yes, get back to Reagan. That's what Alyssa Slotkin suggested. Alyssa Slotkin suggested that the Democratic Party needs to get back to the philosophy of Reagan. That's what she said. So that's what he's saying. Okay.
So this is the type of commentary that we get from Rumble. Wow, Medicrap for all? Okay, you have never worked for the government. You clearly do not understand what a single-payer system is and how it is government-funded, not government-run. But continue to suggest that you understand.
Why are you engaging with that? That's what you would say to me.
No, I engage with this one person because they're the only person dumb enough to make such a statement. Because everybody else understands what single-payer healthcare is. So
well, on our channel, but this could be a new person. Maybe you should just be nice and say, no, this is how it's done. Maybe they're just being a troll.
When you come on and make a statement like that.
I know.
Sorry, I'm not going to be nice about it.
At the same time, though, by the way you do this is, like, somebody brings up men who transition, and somebody brings that up, and you go, no, I don't.
Can't play women's sports.
I don't support that. Can't do it.
Sorry.
Talk about people border. No, we need to keep our border south. And everything they do, you just toss it aside, toss it aside, toss it aside. I know people hate when I talk about when I actually was in politics. I guess you'd rather me talk about when I was a high school football coach. It's not relevant here. You toss that aside and then go, listen, they're going to try to distract you with this stuff, okay? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with us being the party of acceptance. We're not going to be the party of advocacy. We're going to leave that to families. We're going to leave that to friends. We're going to leave that to doctors. We're going to leave that to you all. But we're focused on making sure that the greatest transfer of income in the history of mankind, from middle-class Americans in the 1980s and 90s, over the last 30 or 40 years, to the richest billionaires and multi-corporations on earth, that's what we're focusing on, and we're not going to let them extend tax cuts to the richest billionaires on the face of the earth who are running monopolies that are changing your family's lives, costing your jobs, melting your children's brains down. We're not going to let them give them a bigger break. We're going to give you a tax cut so you can afford to pay your rent, so you can afford to send your kids to school, so you can afford to have the dignity that they've taken from you. God, how could Democrats lose with that message?
They need to.
Mr. Scarborough, you were a Gingrich Republican who was a part of the 94 wave along with Bill Clinton that did NAFTA, normal trade relations with China, the crime bill, the Telecom Act, and you did partake in the repeal of Glass-Steagall. You have as much blood on your hands as anybody. You want to wax poetic about where this country is? You did it to us. Gleefully, I might add.
I find that so ridiculous that he just went on a rant like that. Like he actually gives somewhat of a shit about working class people. What's interesting is I don't recall him suggesting the Democrats fight for any of those things when they were in power. Now, I don't watch that show, mind you, because I don't watch trash. But I've never seen anything coming off of MSNBC that would support single payer healthcare. So why would you say that now? Now you say it because you know that it can't happen. So it's like, get the hell out of here with that.
And it's very
He's
easy.
ridiculous. He is. I can't look at them without thinking of Don't Look Up anymore.
We'll finish this out.
Take back the economic progressive argument. That is winning messaging. They need to lose the cultural war. Progressivism, it's not part of the conversation right now.
Yeah.
They need to stick to what the majority of Americans relate to. And right now, it is that Donald Trump and his cronies are getting rich and hijacking the rule of law, and everyone else is suffering.
Okay,
but they didn't care when the Democrats were doing it. Did she complain about Nancy Pelosi getting rich?
What about Wasserman Schultz? What about the Biden family? People were doing it in full view. You never said anything, ever.
But Trump and his friends are getting rich. You mean his friends like, the Clintons? Because they're friends.
They think because Trump does it in full view of everybody that somehow makes it worse. No, in reality, it makes it better. Because now you really get to see what these people are up to, what they've always been up to. And that's why they hate them.
Oh, my God.
They hate them because Trump really doesn't fucking care. When Trump is done in 3.5 years, he's not going to care. He has his legacy. He'll, live on the golf course until he eventually dies from cholesterol poisoning from eating McDonald's every day. My guess is that's what it'll be. But this is the world we live in, where these elitists that live in this bubble want to continue this ridiculous message. And that's why Rattner in particular is a rat for saying what he said.
Well, and I also see you've got, and I forget who the douche is that's talking about the Social Security check, but man, do I have something to say about that piece of shit.
So
that guy's comment is one of the most elitist, obtuse, like just so out of touch comments, and just with such like, he's so indignant about it. Like, just what a piece of shit. Are you going in that? Because
I am. So
I don't even know who that is. So do the intro.
You could swing from one direction, which is the Democratic side of the elitist Zionist bubble that is Stephen Rattner. Now you swing to the GOP side.
Okay, good.
Zionist movement, which is Howard Lutnick. And so this is what Mr. Lutnick had to say about the perception that Social Security is being cut.
Say Social Security didn't send out their checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. She just wouldn't. She'd think something got messed up, and she'll get.
That's a guy who really doesn't. That's a guy who doesn't like his mother-in-law. He's like, all right, she doesn't get a check. It's not a big deal.
No, that's how you see it. That's not at all how I see it. He is wealthy. She is well cared for. She is somebody that doesn't need her fucking Social Security. She doesn't need it. So yes, for people that don't need their Social Security, maybe they would not necessarily notice, you elitist prick. But for the people that live on it, it's a whole different story. The fact that he said that is exactly what, like, it isn't that he doesn't like her. It's that he probably takes care of her. So get the hell out of here.
This is also the argument that unfortunately we see too often from our libertarian friends like Martha Bueno and Angela McArdle and a bunch of others, Can Con and so on, that actually believe that charity is better than a government program when it comes to things like that. And that's a big mistake. And it doesn't work. And
this guy is garbage. This, and I want these things to get out there more and more because, like I say, okay, this is sort of up there with Mangione monetary theory. Because people like this are the blight that are the problem. People like this need to know what it's like to not have things. Because clearly they have no clue.
This is also part of the problem that I think people are forgetting about Lutnick is that, on the one hand, they are correct. that there are problems with any government program at the scale of something like Social Security. The problem that they have is they don't really care if there's casualties from cutting the bloat that is within the Social Security Trust Fund. And what we have to remember is that the biggest reason why we have dependencies, especially amongst perhaps not able-bodied seniors, for example, and why they are in a position that they're in, is because we do not have a living wage, we do not have universal health care, and we have had labor decimated for over a generation, almost 2 generations. And guys like Howard Lutnick, in particular, have benefited substantially from the system working in their favor nonstop since the Reagan 80s. So that is why he talks like this.
He's probably wearing $10,000
A
cufflinks.
fraudster always makes the loudest noise, screaming, yelling, and complaining.
So what he's implying
is that he's the fraudster because he's screaming and complaining?
Suggesting that the only people that are screaming and complaining if they don't get their Social Security check are people that are guilty of fraud? That's your statement? Those are the people that are complaining?
The fact that anybody who would complain is likely to be a fraudster because regular people wouldn't notice if their check didn't come. That could be the most out of touch. I mean, we're only in March, but that could be it for the year so far. The most out of touch, ridiculous thing that somebody could say is that because your rich mother-in-law wouldn't notice her Social Security check, which is probably a pittance of whatever estate she's living off of, she wouldn't notice that. So only people that are fraudsters would complain. That's the kind of douche canoe we need people to see. And hopefully they know who that is because those people are just too far gone. It's like, I'm sorry, off with their heads. Off with their heads.
Well, I am not going to dispute whether or not they should be dealt with swiftly. But
I mean, I'm quoting Alice in Wonderland, which is a fairy tale.
But when the purge does happen, if it does happen, people like Lutnick are going to be the first ones that people go after because there is a complete lack of empathy. And if anybody knows definitively what Lutnick has or hasn't said regarding the state of Israel, by all means, please share it, because I'm sure we will not be surprised in the least. But what I will tell you is when you think about some of these channels, networks that people have built through merit, maybe not so much, maybe they've had themselves a huge advantage. There's been a lot of talk lately. And you know what, before we get to the story, let's also give a big shout out to Willie Bragg, who does have a podcast. And if you guys are not currently subscribed to the Willie Bragg Show, please make sure that you do. I hear many Jewish people speak out against Israel's action, and I think of man's inhumanity to man. Blaming Jewish people is as crazy as blaming Muslims for 9/11. Blame Netanyahu and the right wing.
Unfortunately, in Israel, it's kind of the whole wing there. But yes, you are correct. That's the truth, is that it is. But we are getting blamed. We are getting blamed. Because there are so many of us running around wanting credit. Like if half of us, and it isn't half of us, but like if some of us are running around wanting the credit for that and being proud of it, then if those are the people that people are exposed to in terms of who Jews are, that's what they're going to see. So, it's definitely like, there's definitely like a civil war brewing within like the Ashkenazi Jewish thing. And so I saw somebody in passing saying something about me being Sephardic. No, I'm not Sephardic. And you're right. If I were, that would mean I would be from Portugal and maybe I'd be a dual citizen and I'd be able to go there. But no, I'm not Sephardic. Tidbit of interesting information, if anybody is interested, Charleston, South Carolina, had one of the original Sephardic Jewish populations in this country and has a very rich Sephardic Jewish history, which is so strange, but yet true. Anyway.
For all the places my father has traveled to, Portugal's probably his favorite, interestingly enough.
Oh, Portugal's beautiful. I mean, look, the Sephardics come from that whole peninsula. But in general, that it was just very bizarre to me that there was this large Sephardic Jewish community in Charleston, and that Jewish people, there's Jewish cemetery there that has people buried that fought in the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, mind you, for the South. These were, Sephardic Jews, but just the idea to me, because the Ashkenazis, we all came here for the most part in the turn of the century. It was like late 1890s to 1920s. So that's so foreign that there would have been Jewish people in the Civil War. It's very interesting.
Big shout out to our favorite gal, Teresa, gifting 5 generational change memberships.
Thank you.
So hopefully you guys will sign up and continue to help our small but mighty channel grow. Remember, for as little as $5 a month, you could become a supporter of our channel. Head over to patreon.com/generational change. I've given a shout out today to our Patreons. And for those of you that are patrons, on our Patreon. So we do thank you very much for that support. It really means a lot. Your support of these conversations does
I'm sorry. I didn't know you were doing that. Go back. I'm sorry.
Whatever. Just do it.
No, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't realize you doing it. Go.
So anyway, support for our channel is very important. Thursday, we're going to take another crack at this, but hopefully we do come through. Medea Benjamin is going to be our guest. And another very large guest would like to come on our podcast. Somebody I know you guys have been angling for a while. It looks like she wants to join us, and it should be fun. Brianna Joy Gray would like to be a guest on Generational Change. So
that's interesting.
I'll keep you guys posted on that. We've been helping out Sabby behind the scenes with some connections. And again, we do these things because we believe in the mission, and we really want to just continue to, we're going to have to come up with another phrase because you do not want me to say transforming politics into service.
No, I'm telling you, red pills for the revolution. We're red pills and revolution. I mean, the politics isn't working, people. It's just not. And I'm just, it's silly at this point. Some of the discussions to me, I feel like, again, I'm too far out of the forest that those conversations are silly. It's like those conversations are like a tree falling off of one of the trees in the forest to me at this point. So it's just silly. It's all the same thing. It's the same ridiculous circus, and we're just watching it. So yeah.
We appreciate you appreciating that, GS. That's what our channel is about.
Yes, that I've always about cross-pollinating. I'm just saying I think we need to be working with a different mission in mind. But yes, definitely cross-pollinating.
So with that said, when we think about the channels that are not so good and the ones that are not on the mission, but are rather on just lining their own pockets, we have been hearing constantly about how Meidas Touch is somehow a bigger channel than Joe Rogan. Well, it's not as true as you may think. And our good friend from Breaking Points, James Lee, was good enough. He is and if you guys have not seen this interview with another gentleman that we are looking to get on our show, Matt Kim, make sure to check out that interview. That long-form interview between those two fighting Asians, I'm telling you, you're going to want to check that one out, guys. James is a really awesome guy. As you know, he's been a guest on our show multiple times. And this is what he had to expose when it came to the Meidas Touch brothers.
Meidas Touch, the podcast that dethroned Joe Rogan, is not really what you think it is. Let me explain. So Meidas Touch, they claim to be an independent news network and also unapologetically pro-democracy. But then their entire channel is basically just Trump sucks. An ugly collapse. Stay awake, Donald. Beg for mercy, Donald. I guess this is enjoyable for some people. But regardless, if you like Trump, don't like Trump, doesn't matter. The whole entire thing is a huge grift for money. The editor-in-chief, Ron Filipkowski, he is one of those Republican turned Democrats, very recent, Probably one of the easiest grifts of all time. That grift goes both ways, by the way. There's a lot of other people who make a lot of money going the other direction. But the crazy part is that Filipkowski basically admitted to the press very recently that the whole thing is just a business play. Quote, the Meidas guys as a team said, "We are going to do this to Trump," Filipkowski said. "We are going to hit every gaffe, every mispronunciation, every slurred word, every mispronounced name, every time he mixes up a name. We're going to clip that and we're going to put it out there and we're going to put it in montages."
Tell me exactly how this helps anybody other than them line their pockets.
Well, that's the whole point. But is that any different? Is that any different than mainstream media with Trump the first time? Is it any different than any other media or, normal media outlet that doesn't have any integrity? It's just another one.
Sable, I would have thought for a second that you would have been one of the last people on earth that would have ever fallen for something like Meidas touch. Just my opinion.
I never heard of it, but I don't even know. I don't know who they are. What? They're a YouTube show?
So before we continue, I think people, for those of you who do not know who Meidas Touch is or who these guys are, they are a trio of brothers.
Like actual brothers or?
Ben Meiselas, Brett Meiselas, and Jordan Meiselas.
Okay, so they are actual brothers, not just saying brothers. Okay.
They are. Their editor-in-chief is Ron Filipkowski, a Florida super conservative turned shit lib because he was anti-Trump. These three brothers are the sons of a very wealthy and influential attorney in the Democratic Party in Los Angeles. And
are you just adding that, or is that what this video is? Is that what James is uncovering, or is that?
No, that's what I'm adding to this right now. For those
of
you who are not familiar with the Meiselas brothers, if you're not familiar with them,
so they're a grift.
1,000 times over. But the reason why this is being mentioned now is because I have my disagreements with Joe Rogan, as I'm sure you do. But the idea that you're going to come out and say that you have a bigger podcast than Joe Rogan, on what grounds?
Well, I don't know the numbers. What are the numbers?
Are they getting 11 to 12 million on average per clip that they put out there, or long form? I don't know. But
that's what I'm saying. They must be basing that on something. There must be some number at which they're higher. And I have never, ever, ever had a single problem with Joe Rogan. Not even ever. I think he's cool looking. He looks like someone it would be fun to hang out with. He's curious. He asks interesting questions. He has interesting guests. He doesn't claim to be an authority or a journalist. I think people should just leave him the hell alone. Like, I don't have any problem with Joe Rogan at all. He just, in what way? He's not, I don't know. Yeah.
The fact that Filipkowski is running this operation for these brothers should come as no surprise to anybody. And of course, Filipkowski is in Tampa Bay, Florida, because of course he is, because they all are. If the grift can happen anywhere, it'll happen in Florida, which sucks.
Why? Because no one else was doing that. Before last August, you can't find a mainstream media story about Trump mispronouncing words and slurring words. They weren't out there. That's just business strategy 101. You identify a gap, and then you fill that gap, and then you make a lot of money. Also, reportedly, they're not allowed to cover subjects like Gaza.
Why? Why would the Meiselas brothers not cover Gaza, Jen? Would you care to guess why they wouldn't?
Well, I'm going to assume they're Zios.
Just a little bit.
But the truth is, the Democratic Party is Zio. If you're aligned with that as a party, as a platform, as a thing, and you make a point of being aligned with that, then you are also in that. So what difference does it make? Of course there's Zios.
You know, the interesting thing about the Bernie AOC tour is that Gaza is not getting mentioned. You think that's a mistake? Or do you think that that's deliberate? I think it's deliberate.
Of course.
much like the Meidas brothers, who are Jewish and are very much on board with what's going on, but they have an empire that they're trying to build. And they know that addressing the issue of Israel-Palestine is probably not going to be good for business, especially if they're on the side of Israel, which they almost certainly are.
Wonder why that is. And maybe my favorite headline in a while, which I think articulates very nicely the end byproduct of the Meidas touch grift, is, quote, Meidas touch turns Democrats' minds to slop. Anyway, just thought people should know about the most popular independent pro-democracy platform on the internet.
James, always doing great work. And why do we highlight that?
And I love that he's calling it out. He's great. He's good. Yeah.
He calls out both sides.
Oh, he calls out grift. He calls out bullshit, and he calls out abuses of working people. He calls out, he punches up.
If he's going to call out Ron Filipkowski going from Republican to Democrat, he's going to call out Lindy Lee going from Democrat to Republican. Because in the end, this is all about dollars and cents. If Neera Tanden saw an opportunity to skip parties, go from the Democrats to Republicans, oh, she'd be there with bells on. I remember how derogatory and dismissive and just downright terrible the Democratic Party was to Tulsi Gabbard. But the second Tulsi got in line and endorsed Joe Biden, oh, they loved her. They thought she was wonderful. And now that she found a new path, now they really hate her guts. Much like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan said that he supported Bernie Sanders. And the Democratic establishment moved heaven and earth to not only disparage Rogan, but to disparage Bernie because somebody like Rogan supports him. And now look where you are. You have no real presence. What the hell is the presence of having a whole bunch of shit libs online support your channel and you act like that's changing anything?
But I think a lot of it isn't real. That's the other thing. How do we know that it's not fake, like K-Hive? How do we know that it's real? I think a lot of it is, even if it's real, it's paid. So, you know, it's paid or whatever. But I don't believe that it's real. Because the kind of people that would watch that wouldn't necessarily, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know people who watch that. I never heard of it. So, and all of a sudden they say they're bigger than Rogan. That's kind of odd.
That's deliberate too. They're saying what they're saying because they feel like they have to compete. But the reality is, it is a very specific niche audience that watches shows like Meidas Touch. Joe Rogan.
Everybody watches Rogan.
Rogan has tremendous crossover appeal.
Totally. That's the thing about him. He appeals to everybody because he has on all different kinds of people. He's a regular guy. Sometimes he gets things right. Sometimes he gets them wrong, but he's not nefarious. You know, he's not out to, he's not, I don't know. I just don't see why people have any problem with him. You might not agree with him. Again, why do we all have to agree? I've said this, but like, there was a time, this is going to blow people's minds. There was a time when we could actually not agree on things and just exist, right? Like, we didn't spend all our time trying to convince people they were wrong about everything. And somebody like Rogan covers a very wide spectrum of stuff. So it's not like he claims to be an expert on something and just harps on it over and over again. You might not like his take. I don't know. I don't have a problem with him. I actually think he's kind of cool. I'd hang out with him. Am I missing something? He seems just normal to me. What am I missing, Peter?
That said, as Sable would say, it is no match for his popularity. Because again, the entire foundation of the Democratic Party establishment today is as soft as sand. That's where they are. And they have they've sowed their fate. They have. There is no coming back from what they've done, for what they've allowed to have happen. And it's just a question of when. What are you inspired about?
You're asking me what I'm inspired about?
I can tell you what I'm not inspired about. I'm not inspired by Bernie Sanders holding huge rallies with people that have no interest in pushing his agenda forward.
I'm so angry. And that's why he's doing that. He's purposefully doing that. That's what I'm saying. This is the first time where I really feel like Bernie is working against us. Right now, more than ever, what we need are people to stop dealing with the Democrats. We need them to go away. They are useless. And until people stop jumping on that, those are the people that are holding us up. Those are the people. And now you've got Bernie, and I say, like, please, she's lost all credibility to me. And the difference between her and him is she's not the reason that we even know what Medicare for All is about, right? She doesn't have that. She was a brand that Justice Democrats came up with in 18 and marketed because it was basically an easy picking and they had resources. So they got her in there, and great, that's a brand. Fun. Bernie at least does have a history of really standing up for people. So I give him that. But this is infuriating.
Bernie at least has a capability of speaking in a way that is very unique to his particular style, but it works. When I've been told that I have a voice for radio and that I could be in politics, it's because I am very fortunate that I have a way of speaking that can capture people's attention. When Alex speaks, and again, I'm not trying to be insulting, but there is something very uninspiring and almost downright cringeworthy when she talks. There is a level or a lack thereof of cadence in the way she projects. She comes off like somebody who's trying to organize a pep rally instead of being
she is
a movement leader. That is a completely different person.
So she sounds exactly like she is. That's exactly what she's doing, is organizing a pep rally to nowhere.
And because so many
pep rallies are more productive. Pep rallies actually can hype up a team to do really well, right? Like it's at a homecoming, like pep rallies serve a purpose. That serves nothing. That serves corporate dem tools. That's what that serves.
And that's also one of the biggest faults in Alex's disposition, which is she actually would probably do very well if she was a hype person specifically for populist left movements, if that was her goal. But anyone who knows Alex knows that that's not her goal. Alex wants to be the big shot. She's had enough smoke blowing up her ass that people have convinced her that she's got what it takes.
I agree with Kat. I find it all childish. She comes off like she is. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
And when she tries to talk like she's a Latina, she sounds even more ridiculous. In fact, even though she is Puerto Rican, she sounds like a gringo when she talks, or a gringa, if you want to be, his Espanol correct. In her case, she does not have anything close to what somebody like, if she really wanted to, Ilhan Omar would be an exceptionally better orator, leader of a cause, despite the fact that she is an exceptionally large lightning rod for politics, whether because she wears a hijab, whether because she is from outside this country, whether because she supports the Palestinian people, whatever the reasons are. There is a lot to be said for why somebody like that, who is exceptionally better at this job than Alex could ever be, does not have the opportunity to show those chops. Honestly, the best person who's running for office right now that we've seen is Butch Ware running for governor in California on the Green Party.
For sure. For sure.
And he's clearly outside the two-party system. So the bigger issue really is, who do you trust? When the Democrats are running for office, everyone is giving them money because they know where to go, whether it is to Act Blue or wherever. The problem with trying to build this outside the two-party system is that you don't know who to trust because there's grifters everywhere. I'd like to believe that Shama Sawant is probably the one trustworthy person that, with efforts put forward under her watch, that she is doing the right thing and is fighting for the right cause. But Our goal is to not just sit around and talk about, well, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. We've been very clear about what Bernie and AOC should be doing. They should be doing everything in their power, organizing the left labor movement. That is what should be. And it doesn't have to be left. It just has to be labor. Just organize the labor movement. And you have the capability of doing it. Going around talking about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is doing this and he's doing that.
The anti-oligarchy tour. Are you kidding me? Oh
so
God,
what's your solution, Bernie?
It's just pathetic.
Bernie, could you imagine the effect that you would have organizing labor in the United States if you said, we have to restore the top marginal tax rate to pre-Reagan era to 72%? You think that wouldn't go over well, Bernie? Why aren't you talking about that?
I kind of feel like the only people now that care are the people that didn't care when they needed to care. And now it's just too little too late. And those of us that were on top of it then know that it's bullshit now. So it's silly and it's just a waste. It'll go nowhere. It'll get a whole bunch of friggin' white neolibs all pumped up and excited and think that they're going to vote their way out of this again. That's all it's going to do. But they're still within such a small echo chamber. And
that's why when they bragged. And that's why when they bragged about the size of their, thanks for coming, Wendy, and always love that that profile picture. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bernie does a rally to over 30,000 people in Denver. Well, who do you think lives there? Do you know how gentrified Denver has become? Do you know how gentrified Boulder has become? That's who's coming to these rallies. These are wealthy, urban, suburban liberals. These are not working class progressives. And it was an extremely homogenous crowd.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. And Denver there's really not an excuse for that. There really isn't. Denver is a lot more diverse than it used to be. So the reason that this is the case is because that's who's their echo chamber now, not because they're actually reaching working people. Those are no longer the Bernie people. A Bernie rally in 2015 was extremely diverse. So the fact that it isn't now is a sign. It's a sign that that's not the same people anymore that are in that. So now the only difference is the people that were voting neolib are now just showing up at this rally. They're this small. We need to make them irrelevant.
You know what we should do, which would be a good throwback for you guys? We should grab some clips of Bernie's rallies in the summer of 2015 and listen to how he spoke then and the way he talked about politics then compared to what he talks about now. That's when you know he changed. Because
I don't know. I never know what is what. You know, what did we think one thing, but he really wasn't planning that, and it was sort of like the dog that caught the car it was chasing. Like we'll never know. We'll never know. Was he always sort of Mick resistance? Did he slowly develop into that as he got older? Did he get? Who knows? I mean, the fact that he referred to Joe as his friend was always suspect to me.
Well, here's what we have to remember about Bernie's run in 2015 in particular. Once it became obvious, and I mentioned this before, that right before college got out in the late spring of 2015, Bernie did a rally at the University of Wisconsin that our friend at The Nation, John Nichols, covered. There were 10,000 people that showed up to this rally. And you knew that there was something in the air with Bernie Sanders even a month into his campaign, that there was something about the message he was putting out there. The fact that it was a completely grassroots campaign. There was no corporate money whatsoever finding its way into his coffers. $27 from every individual donor. And you felt like you were a part of something. Thousands upon thousands of people that were giving their hard-earned money to this cause, to this movement that they felt was real. And in many ways, it was real, especially then. There's no question that there was something going on. But they knew. The establishment knew. That's why Wasserman Schultz got to work right away. That's why, if you remember, in 2007, 2008, when it was Obama, Hillary, John Edwards, and a few others sprinkled in, they had like 26 debates. 26.
Donald James, I'm not canceling the politicians. I'm canceling politics. They all suck. The system sucks. It's designed for us to think that we're voting. We have no say. And these are the people that are assigned the task of looking like the resistance. And until people realize that, then we're still going to just keep sitting in this sort of like Mick resistance thing. So no, I'm not canceling them. I'm canceling the whole thing. That's what I'm canceling.
No, and again, Donald, I don't think Bernie and AOC are bad people. Their strategy sucks.
They're part of this. They're part of something that is designed to keep us oppressed and keep us sort of thinking that we have a say-so. They're part of that. So even though they're the good part of it, and maybe we like them more, it is perpetuating the problem, because at the end of the day, their only solution is going to be to vote. And that is not working anymore.
Nope, not at all. And then, of course, when you think, this is why I'm so adamant against Wasserman Schultz, because I don't forget anything. I remember every little thing. I remember the fact that Wasserman Schultz, in one of the ways that she decided to kneecap Bernie against Hillary, was that they decided to put one of the debate. They knew it doesn't matter what they were putting out to the public. Remember, there was a poll that said that Hillary was up by 60 points in Iowa 2 months before the election. But the internal polling clearly showed that Bernie was within striking distance. And so what did they do in early January before the Iowa caucus? They decided to put a debate on a Sunday night going up against the NFL playoffs. You think that's a mistake? It's not. That's purposeful. And the reason it's purposeful is because they have a mission. Did they accomplish their mission? Yeah, for the most part they did, because Bernie was not willing to fight the way that he really needed to. And maybe initially he just thought that he was going to be a rabble-rousing candidate that was going to try to push Hillary to the left. Yeah, that was really smart. But once it became clear that he could win, they moved heaven and earth to screw him and screw this country. And there are a lot of people, not just Debbie, but she's one of the most guilty, that are still sitting in power today that frankly should be in federal prison as far as I'm concerned. And Debbie, especially because she's an insider trader of the highest order, breaks the law.
They're all so disgusting. The whole thing is just rotten. It doesn't even matter. Like, honestly, it's just silly at this point.
We keep saying it. We'll keep saying it. The solution is to continue to build an unstoppable labor populist movement. That's it. There is no other option.
Start thinking about everybody. Go to generalstrikeus.com. Look through there, get inspired, get some ideas of how you can contribute and build community and build mutual aid and connect people that can help people that when they strike, they'll be able to afford to strike. And it isn't as big of a thing as people think it is. You need certain people in certain industries to be able to strike and hold it for the duration, enough to shut shit down. And we need to have an infrastructure for those people to be able to do that and still be able to feed their families while they're striking. So that's what we need to be doing. It's got to come from way outside of this government, because these people are not working for us. Like, this is silly at this point. This is silly. I was just at the history of the American Revolution, and I'm reading this stuff, and I'm like, it's amazing that people don't see we're in the exact same boat, except instead of the crown, we're dealing with these oligarchs, and we have absolute taxation without representation. We do not have representation, and yet we all pay taxes. And yes, I know it's not about the tax dollars, but the premise of that, this is not working, is just, we're so outside of this now. I can't even with these people anymore. So
if you want to know what type of electoral politics still matters, I'll tell you what still matters.
Local
politics matters. So find out who's running for mayor, who's running for city council, who's running for county commission. You could even be concerned about who your state representative and state senator is. But you know what the local elections have that almost every other election doesn't have? They're nonpartisan. Now, granted, in many places, they will force your hand regarding where do you lean ideologically. But remember, if you're good, being outside the two-party system is probably the best place you could be politically, because we've experienced it on the ground. helping out various candidates in South Florida. When they do not have a label next to their name, you could be the biggest vote blue no matter who or MAGA red supporter, and they will agree on the same candidate. That's power. And that is what they don't want us talking about. So keep fighting.
The Bernie people and the Trump people in so many cases are the same people. And we need to grasp it again. This is a top-down thing. That's a class war. This has nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans. We've been in the class war trajectory since, I mean, we say like, I feel like you could keep going back to like the end of World War II, really. But like, we've been in this trajectory. It doesn't matter who's in office. Yes, they throw bones here and there. We are watching the implosion of capitalism. It's just, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered, and there ain't no bigger hog than us. So it's just a matter of time. And I just like, these people are just sitting there debating ridiculous shit about women in men's sports and sitting there and talking about such stupid crap while people can't even afford to just live. How long can that sustain itself? So no, these people, they're not on our team. We have no representation. And anybody who thinks that we do, you are just drinking the Kool-Aid. This is silly.
Think about history and how the history books wrote about LBJ versus Nixon. I will be the first to tell you that Nixon was an exceptionally better president than LBJ was. They both committed horrendous war crimes. Granted, LBJ started these wars, but Nixon continued them and made it even worse in Laos and Cambodia. But you know what Nixon did do that LBJ never did? Nixon feared the people. When the people wanted something, when they were protesting, he gave in. He did numerous things. The Environmental Protection Agency was a real signature policy that for a time was actually very important for our country. There were other things that he did that were very progressive in nature. Why did he do them? Because he was this super progressive person? No, because he respected the will of the people. LBJ is one of the worst presidents we've ever had, and history wants you to believe that he's one of our best presidents. He's not. Same with Woodrow Wilson. We are going to write our own history now. That's what matters. So keep fighting the good fight. We appreciate you all. We'll see you Thursday.